You got it, Morgan.
Is it going? Yeah, I think so. Okay, thanks.
It looks to me like it's still paused, so I will continue it just in case too. Maybe we'll have two copies, but you know.
All right. Ready to get going, everyone? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you everyone for taking time out of your schedule tonight to be here. I know we are at a busy point in the semester, so it means a lot that you are here, and we're excited to tell you about the Law Review's write-on process. Just going to do quick intros of the board members who are in the room. So my name is Sarah Glesney. I'm a current 2L. I am a Volume 49 associate, as well as the incoming editor-in-chief for Volume 50. I will popcorn to Dana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dana Strube-Kavitz. I was an associate on Volume 49, and then I'm a notes and comments editor for Volume 50. Maybe some of you have seen me in your classes. I hope so. I will pass it off to Morgan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan Phelps. I am also a 2L and an NCE for Volume 50. And then Allie?
Yeah, hi, I'm Allie Baker Fall. I was an associate with Volume 49, and I am the incoming associate editor-in-chief for Volume 50.
Awesome. Thanks for your intros, guys. So tonight we're just going to be going over what to expect generally with the upcoming write-on process. Just a note at the beginning that we're going to reserve questions till the end. If you'd like to, you can feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll probably just run through them at the end. But just as far as just etiquette, to not interrupt with them audibly while we're presenting, so we can just get through everything and you guys can have as thorough of an understanding as possible before we go on to questions. All right, so a quick overview of what Mitchell-Hamline Law Review is. Or I guess, I'm sorry, this is kind of our outline. First, we'll be talking about what Law Review is generally, then going on to talking about who the current board is, as well as we do not yet know where Volume 50 associates are, so we will talk about what we hope that at least some of you will be doing next year as associates. We'll go over some of the benefits of being on the Law Review and give you specifics on write-on, including upcoming dates and deadlines, and then the two components, which are the Bluebook Quiz and the case note, which we will get a lot more into the weeds on later. And then last, we're going to end the session with some tips and tricks for a successful write-on. So hope that that's helpful and reserve some time for questions. So Mitchell-Hamline Law Review, generally speaking, is a student-run journal, pointing out that we were founded in 1974, because what's really exciting about that is that this is going to be our 50th volume. So I am really thinking of it as like a celebratory volume, and I hope that everyone else thinks it's as exciting to be a part of something that really feels like a piece of history of Mitchell-Hamline, as well as our predecessor schools, William Mitchell and Hamline. Broadly speaking, I think it's fairly well known, but we, being student run, we are the ones who are working on articles that are coming from sometimes students, but also from some of our own professors, from practitioners. It's an exciting opportunity to see a really wide breadth of writing and different legal areas covered. Something that I think is also exciting about the Mitchell-Hamline Law Review is that we are available on Westlaw, Lexis, and our Law Review website, which means that if you have the opportunity to publish through our Law Review as an associate, you will get to be on Westlaw and Lexis, which is pretty cool after learning how to navigate it in your 1L year. So this is just our current board, pointing it out in case you are familiar with any of the names on this list. I think that everyone who's a board member is pretty open to your questions. We've all been through this process before. Also showing you, looking at this number, there's a lot of people who can get through the process. It's challenging, but it's something that many students have done, and we believe in you, and we want to support you as much as we can. So again, just take a look. If you know someone on that list, I think you can safely reach out to them and just ask for any guidance as you're getting geared up to start the write-on process. And then this is kind of something we like to think of what the ideal timeline for applying to be an associate on Law Review is. For full-time students, we suggest the end of your 1L year. And then for part-time students, either the end of 1L or 2L. The reason for this is it's really ideal to have the option to be on Law Review for a full 2 years. Your first year will always be as an associate, which we'll get into the details of what associates do shortly. But if you have any interest in serving on the board, that is something that's only going to be available in your second year, because we want to make sure that you are comfortable with the basic work of, I don't mean to call it basic like as simple, but just like the groundwork that associates do to make the law review happen before you become part of like the broader moving parts that the board is. And then to touch briefly on, there's quite a few benefits of being a part of the law review, but just wanted to touch in on some of the kind of major and I think to a degree obvious ones, but some are not as well known if you haven't had the opportunity to get to know people who are on law review yet. First is that I think that the Mitchell-Hamline Law Review is a great place to further the skills that you've started acquiring in your LARC class, as well as skills that maybe you've acquired from past jobs of being a great legal researcher, a writer, being able to do editing of others' work, and improving your citation skills. Something that I really enjoyed was that it does give you great exposure to different practice areas, and different just topics that maybe wouldn't be the topic that you would select to write a long paper on, but you get to see this really fascinating research, and you get to understand how some of these sources that you maybe wouldn't encounter work as well. There's also an opportunity for all associates to be published. We can talk a little bit today. I think it's not as much of the focus of write-on, but part of being an associate is writing a long paper that the Mitchell-Hamline Law Review will always at least consider for publication. This year we had a really fantastic batch of associates, I guess, because we had a lot of us get offers to publish. So it's something that we hope will be the same next year. We can never guarantee because we'll just see as papers come in, but at a minimum, you get the chance to be considered, and we think that odds are we'll get to carry on the tradition of giving a lot of associates that chance. The law review is a great place to build relationships. So it's good for networking in terms of meeting your fellow associates, being part of a really a team that works closely with your managing editors, which we'll get into that as we're talking about board positions later. And we also have different events from academic ones. We've got a symposium coming up pretty soon, actually, on a really interesting topic, as well as some social events. This last year, I know we did a couple of happy hours, and I hope that we get to do that again this year, as well as just learning how to be part of a team and building yourself up, hopefully, to step into a leadership role. I know that's been a huge thing for me, that law review has given me the confidence to even apply for a leadership role this year. And then there's some things I think, again, this is fairly well known, but the law review looks great on a resume. We will be sending out offers prior to when OCI occurs. So it's something that if you're interested in having that be a part of your resume, it's great. Judicial clerkships, I know for better or worse, there can be a fair amount of sorting that goes in whether someone's participated in law review is just a huge deal. And then finally, this is kind of on the academic and practical side of things. You do get credit for working as an associate. So it's 3 pass-fail credits your first year. Typically, the recommendation is to do 2 credits the semester that you write your long paper and 1 the semester that you don't. Though I've heard that some people shuffle that around in different ways. So you technically could do it differently. That's just what we find for workload makes the most sense. And then moving on, sorry guys.
I can take this one, Sarah.
Thank you. I was gonna say, sorry, Morgan, I think we switch here now, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so as a first year law review member, you're called an associate. So associates do really 2 main things. The first has to do with the articles that we eventually publish. So you are editing them, you're conducting authority checks, making sure that all of the sentences and all of the content throughout the whole article is supported by good authority. And you're also going through and correcting the citations, grammatical errors, spelling errors. And then the second thing that you do as associates is satisfy your long paper requirement, which is a Mitchell-Hamline requirement. So at some point during your time in Mitchell-Hamline, everyone has to write a long paper. So we encourage associates to write the long paper during the fall, so your first semester as an associate, so that we can look at your long paper and consider it for publication. Like Sarah said, a lot of associates were selected for publication this year, which is great, and we hope to do the same thing this upcoming year as well. A little bit more about the long paper: you can choose to write on any topic you'd like. So in seminar courses where you have to do a long paper, you're kind of constrained to writing on the topic of that seminar. But for law review, you can pick anything that you're interested in, and then you have a faculty advisor kind of work with you throughout the process, and it's a pass-fail paper. And then in your second year, you get an opportunity to apply to be on the board. So there are a few different board positions. Articles editors are the people that will work with the authors. They actually are the ones who choose articles that will be published. And then managing editors are the ones that will work with you guys, associates, first year members. And managing editors also will go through articles at the end after the associates have done all their editing, and we'll go through and kind of check everything. And then notes and comments editors, that is like Dana and I, we run the write-on process and also help associates with long papers. And then there are symposium editors and online editors. They do all of the symposium and event coordinating and keep our website updated, our blogs, and all of our social media. Okay, how do you join? So I believe that if you're at the session, you've probably already registered, but if you haven't yet, the QR code here should work, and maybe we can drop the registration link in the chat as well. But it closes on May 14th, so spread the word to all of your friends. And then the write-on process we'll get into more as well, but it is a 3-week process that begins on May 22nd. It consists of 2 parts, a Bluebook citation quiz and the case note. Okay. So one thing that we wanted to note is that the write-on should be accessible to everyone. We want every kind of person to join. We don't want that to prohibit you from writing on. So if you do need accommodations, we ask that you contact Allison Quinn. She is the Director of Disability and Student Services, and we ask that associates do this 10 days prior to write-on beginning. So that's in a couple weeks. And then if there are some other kind of accommodations that might not be covered, like traditional accommodations, let us know. We can accommodate your any like emergency situations, stuff like that. So we want to be flexible with everyone.
Just adding quickly, the date then would be May 12th, because write-on starting on May 22nd. That checks out, right?
Yep, 22 minus 10. Okay. So yeah, these are the specific dates. The Bluebook quiz will be sent out at 8 a.m. on Monday, May 22nd. And you have 1 week to complete the Bluebook quiz. So it's due that Sunday at 11:59 p.m. And then the case note, you have 2 weeks to complete. It will be sent out again on 8 a.m. on the Monday, May 29th. And it is due by Sunday, June 11th at 11:59. And then, yeah, like Sarah said, we plan on extending offers in early July before OCI. And these deadlines are concrete. They're not going to change on our end. And we just hope that you can also follow them as well. They're concrete. But yeah, let us know if something really emergency situation comes up. We can try to honor and accommodate you as well.
Okay, so now what you guys are really here for, kind of the nitty gritty about the write-on process. Although I do want to just add really quickly, Sarah and Morgan did a great job talking through all the different law review positions and the ideal timeline. I do want to mention, if you are a part-time 1L, feel free to consider law review an option for 3 years. Actually, we have plenty of people who do different board positions the next year or continue as a CE. So you actually don't need to constrain it to a 2-year timeline if you don't want to. And I also just want to note that all of these positions are being filled by a mix of BAM and blended students with a variety of different obligations in their personal and professional lives. We have people who have full-time jobs, who have multiple kids, who still make law review work in their schedule really well. So if that's a concern you have, we're happy to connect you to someone who might share some of your circumstances, but I do just want to throw that out there before we get into the write-on process in more detail. Okay, so the write-on process. First off, just a little bit of a note about the grading. All submissions and grading are completed anonymously. So you'll be assigned a write-on name at the beginning of the experience that will be yours and yours alone. Please do not share it with anyone. The only people who actually know who the names belong to will be the NCEs, and we actually do not grade your materials at all. So no one who's grading your material will be able to attribute it to you whatsoever. The grading itself is done by rubric, and it's actually a very regimented process. Our graders actually go through training, they do practice assignments. We take a metric of their grading style, and we actually have 2 people grade each submission, and we pair those people based on their strictness, if you will, as a grader. So if we have a particularly hard grader, they're going to be matched with an easier grader, just to make sure that it's really a fair process through and through. It's really well thought out. And then your write-on submission is the entirety of your application. We do not expect you to submit any sort of resume or a cover letter, letter of interest. And specifically, you cannot tell us your GPA. Even if you want to tell us your GPA, you cannot tell us your GPA. We do not care. And quite frankly, if you're someone who feels like your GPA isn't the strongest point on your resume, law review is actually a great thing to add to your resume to pad it out in terms of your law school experience. And then some key warnings that I hope are obvious to you all, but we do want to tell you, plagiarism is not tolerated at all, not even a little bit. Don't do it. Don't think about it. Just don't. We hope that at this point you guys are in a graduate degree program, a professional degree. Hopefully this is not news to you and is not surprising, but really don't plagiarize, guys. You may not work with others during this process as well. You might have friends who are going through write-on. It's totally fine if you want to send them a text and be like, oh man, this is taking longer than expected, but that's it, nothing else. You can't tell them anything about your thoughts on the case note. You can't tell them about your Bluebook quiz. It's totally you and you alone. In terms of the case note, we have a closed universe, which is great for you guys, because what that means is that we are going to give you the Supreme Court case we want you to write about and a packet of research already done for you to look through and base your note off of. But what that means is that no outside research is actually allowed at all. So even if you feel like you could go and find something else that would help your article, you are not allowed to. External sources are strictly prohibited, and that is something that our graders will check for, and they will find them if you try to include them. So don't try to sneak them in there. Let us do some of your work for you. And then finally, you will sign an honor pledge that is due with your Bluebook quiz. And this is just attesting to the fact that you know all these policies, you recognize them, and that you're abiding by them. Okay, so the Bluebook quiz. I feel like sometimes this can be kind of a scary piece of the write-on process for people, especially if you are in your 1L year. In your 1L year, you frequently use the Bluebook, the blue pages of the Bluebook, and in law review we actually use the white pages of the Bluebook, but I want to assure you that when you are going through this quiz, we are not looking for perfection, we are looking for effort, and I know that you are all in law school, so you are absolutely all more than capable of working through this quiz and getting and understanding what you need to do. So the quiz itself is split into 2 portions. The first portion is designed to test your ability to Bluebook, just like go through the citations and look for kind of nitpicky corrections to make sure that it's compliant with the Bluebook style. So as you can see, we have an example on the screen. So the question might look something like the cue on the screen, where there's just a few believable but incorrect things like the italicization or the unnecessary Supreme Court abbreviation there. And so you would be expected to go through and use your Bluebook. You can use your Bluebook and the Chicago Manual of Style and look at the rules and see that, oh, this shouldn't be italicized. I'm going to put that into regular font and remove that Supreme Court abbreviation. I'll note that the questions themselves will have a variety of different number of different things that need to be fixed. So it's not always necessarily just two things. You'll have to go through with a careful eye. And I'll also note that all the citations that will be presented in this portion of the quiz will be fake. You cannot go find them somewhere and try to find an example of the citation to base your answer off of, which of course you wouldn't do anyways, because that is not allowed. And then part 2, authority checks. These will be 20 multiple choice questions, which will ask you to go track down real sources. So unlike the citations, these will match to actual sources that exist. And you'll go and depending on the question, you might check that the quotation is correct. So it might ask you to go find it in a law review or in a case and compare the language word for word. It might ask you to go to a news source and consider whether the takeaway expressed in the sentence is supported by the article. And then it'll give you some options to pick from. I will note here, you are allowed to use Lexis and Westlaw in addition to your Bluebook and to the Chicago Manual of Style in this portion of the Bluebook quiz. Obviously, you'll need to if you need to go track down a case. It might also direct you to external websites that are not on Lexis and Westlaw, say like BBC or something like that. Those links will be provided for you in the quiz, so you'll be able to navigate those easily and know that you're using the right article. Okay, the case note. So you finished the Bluebook quiz, awesome, you're a week in, you're on to your case note format. It's basically, you're gonna analyze a recent Minnesota Supreme Court decision. We decide that case, we will provide it to you, so you don't have to worry about picking a case. Generally, you can the general outline that you'll see is that you talk with start with some history, then the current relevant law, implications of the opinion, and then you make a decision. Did the court get it right or wrong? And you back up your opinion with that research that we provided. And really, there is no right answer on how to argue this case. When we give you the case, we're not like thinking, we read this, we think it should come out this way. Like the court was definitely right, or the dissent was definitely right. Truly, your conclusion is yours. We just want you to stand by it. We do not care however you come out. It's totally up to you. And then, as Morgan stated, the case and the sources will be sent to you via email at 8 a.m. sharp on May 29th. If you don't get it at that point, feel free to reach out to us, but that shouldn't be an issue. The length, I understand that this is a 2-week time period. So maybe if you're looking at this slide, this might look like, wow, that's a lot of length for 2 weeks, but I'm assuring you, you can do it. And also when you do your footnotes and your above the line text, you'll be surprised how quickly it goes. So our minimum is 8 pages of text and 8 pages of endnotes. And so that endnotes would be like the footnote numbers, and that can be citations and additional text that you include under there. And we have a 20-page maximum. So that extra 4 pages, so 8 plus 8 is 16 pages, that extra 4 pages can be used however you see fit. So if you'd like to include an extra 4 pages of above the line text, but your citations fit within 8 pages, that's fine, or vice versa. So the extra 4 pages do not need to be evenly split between your footnote or your endnotes and your above the line material. They can be, but they don't need to be. And then, as we stated before, this is a closed universe task. No outside research is allowed. I'm sure you all are thinking, darn, why don't I get to do more research for this project? But you are not allowed. So don't even think about it. you have everything you need. I will note that the research packet that you are provided will have more than enough information for you, and it is not necessary for you to use every source that is provided to you. We're giving you a plethora of options so that you can have lots to base your argument off of. It will be able to support arguments from both sides of the opinion, and you don't need to use all of it. In fact, I would suggest when you do it, you go through and look at the appendix of the packet and decide which sources seem like it would be helpful to your argument and which wouldn't be, and prioritize that way. Again, you cannot use Lexis or Westlaw during this period. Of course, that is just pertaining to your case note writing. If you are at a job, you feel free to use Lexis or Westlaw when it comes to that, just not when it comes to your write-on submission. Okay, resources. I'm sure you're thinking, okay, you want me to write a 16-page paper, maybe a 20-page paper in a few weeks, and I have only written like one motion in LARC this whole year. But don't worry, we have additional resources for you. Professor Knapp next Wednesday at 5 p.m. will be providing a how to write a case note session. So it'll be another session like this. It'll be recorded if you cannot attend and live. So I encourage you to attend live if you can, so you can ask questions. Professor Knapp is a pro. He's been doing this for the law review for many years, and his insights are invaluable. And I assure you that when I came into this process, I was a little bit stressed out thinking about these things that I have to do. And Professor Knapp's session did really help me feel like I was prepared to write the case note. So I encourage you guys to pursue that. And then publication as like a little reward and to kind of keep you guys motivated as you're going through the write-on process, because we're not here to lie to you. The write-on process is challenging. It's meant to challenge you, but it's totally doable. You all can do it, and you'll feel so good when you do. When you do, you'll feel like you're really accomplished. You did something hard, and you succeeded. And I'm telling you, if you made it to law school, every one of you is capable of getting this done. But to keep you going, because in it, sometimes you can feel like, oh, this is feeling like a lot. One of our long papers will be reviewed and selected by our articles editors for publication in volume 50 of the Law Review, which is super cool because 1, you get published, you're on Lexis and Westlaw. 2, you have a huge chunk of your long paper done because it'll also satisfy your long paper requirement. So you're going to go into your 2L year with already like 20 pages of your long paper done. So that's like so nice. And I know that our past associates who've been selected have really felt the benefit of that. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Okay, tips and tricks for a successful write-on. So you've heard a lot about what we're asking you to do. You've heard about the time frame we're asking you to do it in. And I want to tell you, it is not impossible. It's more than possible. In fact, this 3-week period that we're giving you is actually more time than you need. It's not because we're expecting that the tasks we're assigning you are going to take a full 3 weeks. It's actually so that we're giving you guys flexibility so that you can make these tasks fit in with your schedule. In fact, personally, I absolutely did not start my case note until the 2nd week of the case note portion of the write-on, and I was fine. I actually turned it in a day early. I think I might have been one of the few people that did that, but I had something to do. So, you got to plan around your life. And so that is really what we're designing here, or hoping to get with this time frame. It's something that's providing an adequate challenge, but also allows you to schedule yourself around everything else you have to do. We understand that you're probably starting summer jobs. You might have families, maybe you need to take a weekend trip because, it's summer, you want a little break. You should be able to do all of that and accomplish write-on, no problem. A few reminders, like I said before, Law Review uses the white pages, not the blue pages of your blue book. You use the blue pages in LARC, so make sure that you are paying attention to that when you are performing the Bluebook quiz. Pretty easy to tell. They are quite literally, I actually see someone looking at their Bluebook now, which is great. Quite literally, the white pages are white and the blue pages are blue. So don't worry, you'll notice if you're in the wrong section. We highly recommend that you use the index. If you feel like you need to find something, go see if the keyword is in the index and you can go to a page right away. If you're someone who has the Bluebook online, that's a really handy tip. You can search the Bluebook online. If you don't have the Bluebook online, I recommend you consider investing in that. It is a great resource. And then also make sure you check the local rules. So Mitchell-Hamline Law Review does have a few local rules that we apply to our journal specifically. Any local rules that we expect you to take account of, we will provide in a handbook that you were given at the beginning of write-on. So you just need to make sure to read through the handbook, find those local rules, highlight them, and pay attention to them. I assure you they're not tricky. They're not meant to trip you up. They're actually very intuitive, and probably you'd be abiding by them anyways, but just something to keep in mind. And then with the Bluebook Quiz, I feel like sometimes because you get only 1 week for the Bluebook Quiz and the case note feels like maybe a bigger project, or it might take more time, people tend to underweight the time they spend on the Bluebook Quiz, or they feel like it's not as instrumental. But I am here to tell you that it is actually worth 40% of your write-on score. So do take it seriously. It will take you much less time than the case note. It's just the reality between writing a paper and doing a few questions, pretty short quiz, honestly. But it is an important part of your write-on. So make sure that you are going in with that mentality. And then the case note, again, please do not go outside the source packet. We did all this research for you. We want you to use it, and we don't want you to go outside, because if you do, we will notice, and unfortunately, there'll be consequences. You will not be able to participate in write-on if you don't abide by our rules. Analyze whether sources are comparable or distinguished from the case. That's helpful to know. We are giving you a source packet that can support 2 different arguments. So we do need you to make sure you're reading your sources and confirming that the sources you're picking actually align with what you are using them for. So be mindful of that. The packet is not tailored exclusively to a single-sided argument, so you will need to pick through sources for that. 2 weeks, go fast. I know, again, it sounds like we're asking you to do a big task in a short amount of time, but really you can do it. You just have to keep yourself on track. Again, I did my case note in less than a week. I was working a full-time job, so I only spent my evening times doing it. And I also had summer classes. So I'm telling you, you can do it. You just need to sit down and power through. And then again, the case note is worth that other 60% of the write-on score. So again, obviously, the lion's share, but barely. So do put good effort towards your case note, but know that it's not the only thing you're being graded on. And then with all of this, just know that we are not expecting perfection from you in any sense. We know that we're asking you to write a paper in 2 weeks, and to do a Bluebook quiz with a section of the Bluebook you might be less familiar with. What we're looking for is that you gave it good effort, and that you you put some work into learning what you need to learn for write-on. And from there, law review is really a growth experience. We will teach you on the job. You'll get way more familiar with the Bluebook, and you'll become a way better writer and researcher. So don't worry if you're feeling like what you're turning in isn't your best work. We know it's not, because we're asking you to do it in a time frame that is just not going to be feasible for that in most circumstances. So don't get discouraged on that front. And then really the most important thing I could tell you, or anyone here can tell you, is that you just need to finish write-on. It's a big process. It happens right after finals. So sometimes it can feel like, oh man, it sounds so nice to not do this right now. But if you finish write-on, you will feel so accomplished. You'll have gone through a really, honestly, I think it's a rite of passage in law school. It's something that you can, I know for sure at my job, it's something I talk about with people. Like when I was doing it, they're like, oh, I remember that. It's like a great bonding experience. If you feel like you're like standing in line with your boss and you need to talk about something, write-on is a great thing to commiserate over. And then also if you finish it, that really is more than half the battle. I will say that last year, I think about 2/3 of people who finished write-on were offered positions on the law review. So it is the most important thing you can do to ensure that you get on to law review is complete write-on. And you can do it. I know you can. Okay, I feel like it'd be helpful here if maybe Morgan, Sarah, or even Allie, if you want to hop in, do you want to share a little bit about your own personal write-on experiences and any tips you have to persevere through these 3 weeks?
Sure, yeah. I can talk about my write-on experience a little bit. I am someone who can only look at the Blue Book for like max 2 hours at a time. So the Bluebook Quiz, I spread out over like 3 days and worked on it for probably 6 to 8 hours total. I will say, like, going through the white pages and figuring out like where the misplaced commas are and stuff like that, like, seems very tedious, but as an associate, you really like things just jump out to you now. Like it begins to go a lot quicker, and it's kind of fun actually sometimes. And then for the case note, I started reading the materials in the case packet because it is quite large. I started doing that the first week, and then I didn't start writing until like 3 days before it was due. I don't know if I'd recommend that. It was like a couple really long days, but that's just what worked with my schedule. And like Dana was saying, the biggest thing is just to finish right on. So that's just what I was pushing for. And then too, I did want to mention a little bit about my experience as an associate. So Dana, Sarah, and I were all on the same ME team. So we all have the same managing editor. And Gabriella was just great. Shout out. But being an associate, you like work mainly with your team. That's just kind of who you get to know the most. And yeah, it's just like, it's fun to get to know students that you maybe otherwise wouldn't, and be in a group where there's people you can ask questions of and get to know. So Sarah, you want to talk about your write-on experience?
Yeah, totally. So I would say the biggest thing for write-on for me was setting realistic goals, or even, I dare say, overly ambitious goals that I knew that if I fell short of them, I would still be okay, which is how I try to approach a lot of law school, to like put a little bit more on my to-do list than I actually can probably get done, but it's okay if the thing gets pushed back a tiny bit. So I think that, well, for my Bluebook Quiz, I had just started a job and I was working full time. And I broke it up over either 2 or 3 days. And I think in total, I spent like 6 to 8 hours on it. And so doing like just chunks of it, like I think I tried to really work through the citations first and then work through the authority checks separately. So my mind was kind of in the different frames at each time. I found that to be helpful. And I guess when I say 6 to 8 hours, I did spend more time like really trying to review the white pages beforehand. That was like the time I spent in the quiz. But I'm also, everyone is different, the speed that you work at. And so that's also something to not like compare yourself too much with others, especially after the fact when you get to chat with your friends about the write-on experience. Like, don't feel like you did something right or wrong because it took you a different amount of time. Do what suits you best. And then for the case note portion, I definitely set my goals of like when I would be done reading my main sources. I always have the hardest time with just deciding, like committing to what I want to have as an argument. So having like the date that I would choose which way I was going was kind of big for me. And then just breaking up the writing as much as I could. I think there's always a mad dash at the end, no matter how well intentioned you are. And so don't beat yourself up for that. But like have grace with yourself. Know something that I like to qualify the writing as being somewhere in between. You've got your brief that you did or that for LARC this year, and that's probably your writing sample. It's probably the best writing that you've ever done, particularly in the legal field. On the other end, you have your final exams and the writing that you do there. We want the quality of your writing to be somewhere in between those. We recognize that you haven't had a full semester to work on this. We also recognize that you've had more than 3 hours to work on this. So I like to think of that as kind of the frame of reference, to have the expectation for yourself that you're going to put in the effort, but that it's, despite everyone's closest looking through their own citations, it's probably not going to be perfect, and that's okay. So, Allie, did you want to add anything? Feel welcome to, but not pressured to.
Yeah, just a few quick things. Really, want to reiterate two things that have already been said, but they were things that I definitely needed reiterated when I was in your position last year. One is that the 3-week commitment is a window, not a requirement. So you are not expected to spend, I know it's been said, but you're not expected to spend 3 whole weeks on this. I needed to hear that more than once. And then also, frankly, I don't know if I would recommend this or not, but I didn't even read every page of every source in the packet given. So I'm going to make sure I'm the only one who did that. But I think, I heard that last year and I was like, okay, I don't need to use every source. Okay, I'm going to shoot for using 90% of the sources provided. And it's just not feasible, and it will make your writing worse if you try to incorporate that many sources. So really, truly, it's meant for you to have a wide variety to choose from. And this closed universe is actually a kindness. You might not see it that way in this moment, but it's really making the playing field really fair. And it's meant for you to have a wide variety of sources to pick and choose from. Use the white pages, some in LARC. So if you're like, I'm still confused because I feel like I use these white pages in LARC, just super simple, like Dana said, the white pages in the back half of the book. So just in case you were feeling confused, if you have been using the white pages already in LARC, it might vary from section to section.
Those are all super good points. And I will say, I really agree with Sarah about setting a deadline for choosing your argument. I think that was probably the hardest thing for me, was actually to commit to like really a direction for my paper. And my advice is, even if you kind of have two that you neither are really that good in your mind, I suggest you just pick one, earlier the better, and run with it. You probably will never feel like you have the perfect argument, because ultimately we're giving you a case and we're giving you a packet of research. You actually don't get to control that. So maybe you wouldn't even want to write on the topic at all. So just know that don't wait for like this glowing realization, light bulb moment, like this is the perfect argument. It might not happen, and that doesn't mean that you're not going to have a stellar paper. So something to consider. And then I also just really wanted to address something off of the Bluebook Quiz that Sarah and Morgan, maybe Ali, sorry, you might have said this too. They kind of mentioned it taking 6 to 8 hours. I will say that's probably similar to how long I spent on it. I want to emphasize that my initial completion of the quiz did not take that long. It's also because it's a quiz, so I went over it multiple times. And I want to mention, since these are the types of tasks that are pretty comparable to what you do as an associate, is that you should not expect it to take 6 to 8 hours for you to get through 20 citations as an associate. You certainly learn on the job, so I will not lie to you when I say your first associate assignment will take you longer than your last one, but it definitely doesn't take that long when you're actually on the job. I think that is something that can be kind of a stigma around law review, like it sucks all of your time and it takes time away from other things like your family or your kids. And I'm just going to say that we've actually talked about this today. We think that the credits are actually very fair. The 3 credits are certainly fair. The work is distributed well. You don't have an assignment every week. And some assignments are easier than others. So sometimes you might get an assignment and get a week to do it, and it took you only like a few hours, and then you're done. And then you're done for the whole week, and you don't get another one for a couple weeks. And some assignments might be longer winded. Maybe it's an area you're not as familiar with, so you have to read it a couple times, things like that. I just want to say that the time commitment of write on when you're learning isn't necessarily reflective of what it feels like to be an associate. I actually felt it was super manageable in my schedule, and in fact was more manageable than a class more often than not, because I had more control of when I did my work. And of course, law review, we're human. We know that you're human too. So if you have something come up as an associate, you can communicate that to your ME, and there are safety nets in place to make sure that everything gets done, even if you aren't available. So I do just want to stress that. I know it feels like this is a big time commitment that we're asking you to do for these 3 weeks. Like Ali said, you don't need to spend 3 weeks doing it. In fact, I really hope you don't do that. But just know that this experience is meant to be a challenge and not necessarily reflective of the associate experience. Okay, so we're throwing up our little registration QR code again in case any of you found us via the docket and haven't registered, please do. Again, we want to plug our How to Write a Case Note session with Professor Knapp. He will go into, we've told you kind of what we're expecting and what our experiences were like. Professor Knapp is going to walk you through in more detail what the classic breakdown of a case note is, like what the general sections look like, and maybe how you go about picking an argument, things like that. And that session will be recorded and posted. So I encourage you to attend or to watch the recording. If you have questions about the write-on process, please feel free to email the NCEs. Morgan or I or one of our other NCEs will respond to you. The email is there on the screen. I do want to note it is a Gmail that might throw you. So just make sure that when you get that down, you're putting at gmail.com, not at Mitchell-Hamline.edu, because sometimes I find myself writing that sometimes. So just want to throw that out there. And then more generally, if you're just still like, oh, I'm interested in law review, but I feel like I still have some questions, please feel free to ask any board member. Like I said, if you're someone who has specific circumstances, like you have a full-time job, you have kids or something like that, you have a spouse and you want to talk to someone who has undergone the write-on process and who has been in law review and who also has those things in their life, they exist. Many of them do. In fact, actually, we have our NCEs is like half and half BAM and blended students, and they have, and both of those our blended students have full-time jobs and kids. You can totally do it all. It's actually a really flexible thing to add to your law school calendar, and it's something that we have board members who are willing to talk to you about their experiences, no matter what that experience is. So with that, I think we'll leave this information up in case anyone wants to write it down for a second, then maybe we could pop it down and see if anyone has questions. Maybe feel free to throw it in the chat or jump off mute. If we have a lot of people, feel free to like raise your hand if you want, and we'll call on people to get them.
Which I can also start while you guys are thinking. I did receive one question in the chat from someone, and I'm just going to share out the answer generally. Someone just asked about like being not having had experience doing a paper that has endnotes or footnotes to it. So asking for resources about how to understand how that works. And I would say one of the first places to look when you're in the write-on period is always going to be in the associate handbook that will be sent to you. And that is also available online. So that's just a good place to get started. Also, as you're gearing up for write-on, your LARC professors are great resources. So feel free to ask them too if you're just feeling intimidated about doing the Bluebook Quiz or the case note. So would just highly recommend those two sources. And also just to know that like we all, I think we're in a pretty similar position last year, feeling like intimidated by the white pages, never having footnoted or endnoted anything myself. Some people I guess have been through like master's programs where they've done that more in their research, but I had not. And so it's a learning curve, and we expect you all to be like actively learning while you're going through this process and actively learning and growing into your roles as associates.
Yeah, I will add for the concerns about like the mechanical logistical concerns about footnoting and endnoting, your write-on handbook will actually include a lot of information about how to do that, specifically literally like the key shortcuts for Mac and for PC, and will include very like logistical instructions like that. So if you're not sure how to do that, like Sarah said, the associate handbook is a good spot to look, but the write-on handbook specifically, which you will be sent, is really key for that. That's going to include some of that information that the associate handbook might not have as much detail on, but the write-on one will. I'll also note that we do generally ask you to turn in footnotes and endnotes version. You can convert between them really easily. All of that information is provided for you. And I'll say, if you have questions during write-on, that is actually what the NCEs are here for. That's why we are not grading your papers. It's why we are the only ones that know your anonymous IDs. So if you have any questions, like I can't get my footnotes to convert, don't let that be what makes you not finish write-on. Send us an email at that MHSL submissions email, and we can provide some guidance.
Right,
okay.
Questions popping off. So I think Dana
Love it.
touched on this first one about how many candidates will be accepted as associates. or if we have a certain score that's the cutoff for acceptance. Since I'm gonna have the NCEs answer this because I think you guys are the ones who are better suited to.
Yeah, sure. Morgan, hop in whenever you want. I will say that, so it depends how many candidates will be accepted. Generally, we take about 40 this year. I think it's like 48 we have. So 40 flexible, but in the 40 range. So in terms of like what percentage of candidates get an offer, it really just depends on how many people register for and complete write-on. Last year it was about 2/3, so a really good chance. Like I said, if you really, the biggest thing you can do to ensure that you get on law review is to complete write-on. And then in terms of there's a certain score, no, there is not a certain score. You are compared against the other applicants. So it's pretty much on a curve. So it's not like if no one gets 80%, they're not going to, no one's getting an offer. It's not like that. So you are compared against your fellow candidates who are also anonymously graded. Again, I'm mentioning multiple people grade it. It's a very fair grading process. Morgan, did I miss anything?
Nope, that's good. I do see the second question there. Will we be provided an associate handbook? Yes, we will send you the write-on handbook along with the case note. Is that right, Dana? We send that all together.
Yep, and you will also get the write-on handbook as well. Actually, I will say you probably, so the associate handbook is a little misleading. You probably will not be provided the associate handbook and write-on. You'll be provided the write-on handbook, which is more tailored to the write-on process and will include any local rules that you specifically need to know, and includes actually more information that is like not included in the associate handbook, like how to make a footnote. That will generally not be in the associate handbook, but is provided to you in your write-on material, because we're not expecting you to come in knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's typically just one of the long papers is chosen for, or sorry, do all associates have an opportunity to be published, or is one long paper? Yes, all associate long papers are considered for publication. So I think this year, was it 10 associates long papers were selected for publication? So, I mean, that's pretty good percentage of associate long papers. So, but then for write-on, the AEs typically select just one write-on case note. Is that okay? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the one just pertains to the write-on material, and the reason we can only publish one is you guys are already on the same case. So we don't want our law review volume to be full of 5 notes about the same Supreme Court case. So that's the reason for that. But yeah, your long papers will all be considered for publication. Will we be able to see our score or feedback afterwards? You will not be able to see your score or feedback. In fact, no one knows their score. The only people who could tell you, who have access to the scores, are the NCEs. And I'm telling you, with the volume of write-on applicants we get, generally we could not possibly give you your score off the top of our heads. So really, it is truly anonymous. In terms of feedback, I understand that you might want to know, like, how did I do? How can I improve? That is something that you'll actually be getting largely from your ME. I know that my ME provided me with a practice assignment before I did my first assignment. I know Sarah and Morgan had the same, I'm assuming Allie did too. And they'll give you some initial feedback on that. So that'll give you a good place to start before you get an assignment. But then your ME actually goes through your assignments after you are done, and often will provide feedback to your group as a whole about things they've noticed that consistently were maybe getting missed or could be improved upon. So really the whole law review experience is an opportunity to get some feedback on your blue booking skills. I don't think we've said it here in this presentation, but I know I have in class visits. Paper or blue book skills are really something that is marketable to an employer. I know it's something that, especially when you're in your first kind of your lower level associate jobs, it's something that is really appealing. So to just want to state that this experience of growth can be beneficial beyond your law review experience and into your professional lives.
I see. Yeah, this question is, yeah, kind of, I guess, clarifying, reiterating from the previous question. One of the write-on papers ideally will be published. So I mean, there's a slim possibility that for some reason none would be selected, but I think that that's pretty unlikely. Odds are we're going to have, you know, you guys wouldn't be here if you weren't committed to doing great work. So I think we will almost certainly have someone selected for publication from this. But I guess I want to just like admit there is like the small window of possibility that no one would, but I think it's almost a sure thing.
And,
Well, I think, oh, go ahead, Morgan.
well, I was just gonna say, and it won't be published like as is, of course, like
Yeah,
you,
right.
if you are selected for publication based on your write-on case note, you will develop your paper throughout the whole semester and add like 20 more pages, and then it'll be published.
Yeah. So to use it as your long paper requirement, the long paper requirement is a longer paper than we're asking for write-on. It's called the long paper after all. So you will have to keep working on it. But again, like to have that amount done right at the beginning of the semester, as someone who's written my long paper, I can tell you I was green with envy. It's like very nice. So.
Any other thoughts, questions? Is anyone feeling excited, nervous? All of the feelings? Probably focused on finals. I am just trying to think back to a year ago how I was feeling at this point, and I guess I just want to say like good, thumbs up, that's good. You know, like it's a time to be gentle with yourself. Like go in, give it your best, do work that you can feel as proud of given the limited time. But just like, yeah, be proud of yourself for even considering doing this. And as you move through it, just know that we're all rooting for you. And I'm glad to hear that the information has been helpful. So thank you guys for attending. Are there any last thoughts or questions, or anyone from the board want to add any last thoughts?
Finish right on. You guys can do it. That's my big thing. You guys can do it. Finish right on. You'll be so proud of yourselves. You'll be very good chance of getting on law review. And also it's a really, honestly, it's kind of a community building experience. So you will have no regrets when you finish.
Definitely. And
Sorry. I would add right now, just write the dates in your calendar and then focus on finals.
Yeah.
Don't think about like stress about when you're gonna get the like just focus on your exams and your papers that you have due, and then write-on will be there for you after that.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. I think that's everything we have for the evening. So don't hesitate to reach out with questions, and we wish you all luck with the end of the semester and with the write-on process.
Thank you.
Okay, should I stop recording?
Yes.